Good day, and welcome to Incident Reports and Call Records Part 1. My name is Assistant Chief Dino McNeil, and I will be your instructor for this course. Part 1 deals with issues involving report writing policy and procedures. During this course, we're going to touch on what the department's policy is on when to prepare incident reports. We're going to look at the type of information that needs to be gathered to properly complete an incident report. And we're also going to look at investigative follow-up, documentation procedures, and how all of these items need to be processed as you go through your investigation. The purpose of this training is to ensure that all of the officers on the Notre Dame College Police Department properly file a report on all incidents that occur on property that's owned or controlled by Notre Dame College when there's a requirement to do so. The department's policy is that all officers will properly file an incident report, and all basic police reports must be completed prior to the end of the officer's assigned shift unless otherwise directed by a supervisor. Now, our department policy states that an incident report is going to be completed whenever an incident occurs. Seems like common sense. But really, to be able to know when to prepare an incident report, we have to be able to define what an incident actually is. For the purposes of our definition, our policy states that an incident is any event outside the scope of normal activity, which may include, but is not limited to, crimes or criminal activity, violations of college policy or procedure, any damage to property, either belonging to the college or belonging to others, any non-criminal injury or casualty, or any other incident that's unusual in nature. Routine activities such as unlocking a door or jump-starting a car perhaps, those don't necessarily require an incident report, but they will be documented in call records, which is going to be discussed in another section. So how do we learn when incidents happen? Well, you can learn about an incident occurring through a variety of means. Two of the most common ways that we find out about incidents occurring are 1, requests for assistance, and 2, officer-initiated activities that we do through our normal routine patrol activities. But there's other ways we find out about incidents occurring as well. Now, it's important for officers to know that they need to properly and promptly file incident reports for any of the previously defined incidents, as we discussed in the previous slide, or in the event that there's a unique circumstance which the officer feels needs to be documented incident report, or when directed to do so by a supervisor. Now, to properly prepare a basic incident report, there are certain types of information that we need to obtain to ensure that we achieve an appropriate level of thoroughness and completion for our report. Some of the things that we need to find out include the date, time, and location of the incident as best as we can determine. We need to know what type of incident, including the type of crime, if it's in fact a criminal report. Now, one thing I would note on the issues of determining types of crime, it's very important to note in your report the actual appropriate offense for the facts and circumstances of the incident that occurred. For example, you're not just going to arbitrarily list criminal damaging or vandalism in a case of damaging. Looking at the Ohio Revised Code and looking at the elements of the offense, you may determine that it's actually a criminal mischief instead. So you want to make sure that you take the facts and circumstances and make sure that they match up with the elements of the appropriate offense you want to use for your report, that offense in the ORC. We also want to know the full name, if at all possible, or at least as much of the name as we can find out, of known complainants, victims, suspects, and witnesses. It's important that we obtain personal identifiers where we can, such as social security numbers, driver's license ID numbers, college ID numbers if any of the parties are a student, and dates of birth. Some of this information could be obtained through OLEG, Some of it can be obtained through Leeds or NCIC. You can do that check at South Euclid Police. And some of that information can also be obtained through our CARS system. We also want to try to get full legal and temporary addresses of the parties involved in the incident. In addition, we also need to get valid telephone numbers for individuals. Now, we might not always be able to get a cell phone number on, per se, a student. That information might not be readily available, but in the CARS system we do have access to telephone numbers for an individual's home of record if they are a student, and we can use that if necessary. If a vehicle is involved, we want to get appropriate vehicle information, descriptions, and identifiers as well. This would include make and model of the vehicle, color of the vehicle, identification descriptions such as, is it a four-door? Does the vehicle have damage? Does it have decals? Are there any special identifying features about that vehicle? And you also obviously want to try to obtain a license plate number and the state of issuance if at all possible. As I said, we want to get the names of all the parties involved, and we want to try to get physical descriptions as well. And oftentimes I find that we're a little bit lax in this regard. Again, this information is generally obtainable through the OLEG search feature. All you got to do is look at the printout and you'll see physical description information: height, weight, color hair, color eyes. You'll be able to make a determination of their race generally by looking at a picture. So please make sure all of this information is recorded in your incident report as well. If there is any evidence or seized property involved, you also want to make sure that you provide a full description of that property by item in your report in the appropriate evidence property section, and be able to make the associations to individuals as necessary. And we're going to talk more about that in another part of this presentation that deals with actual preparation of reports in OLEG. Now, this next section I'm going to talk about involves your narrative, and this really is Police Academy 101 type stuff, but it's something that, as we seem to be involved in law enforcement later for more years and a longer period of time, we tend to get a little bit lax. So it's good to get a refresher on this. In your narrative, there are certain types of information that you have to have. Your narrative needs to be complete. It needs to be concise as to the facts of the incident. You need to use an active language, not a passive language. Write your narrative like you would talk, not like you think it should be written. Remember, we're not PhDs, nor should our narrative necessarily try to make it look like we are. Use plain, simple English. The narrative is for the benefit of the reader, not the writer, so make it easy for the reader to understand. We want to note in our narrative the who, the what, the why, the when, the where, and the how of the incident. This is all very important. And it's also very important in your narrative in a criminal case, particularly if an individual is being charged. Your narrative has to identify the elements of the crime to ensure, so it shows the prosecutor, it shows the court that the offense you're charging with did in fact happen, and that you had probable cause for that to charge on that particular offense. So you want to make sure all of the elements of the crime are covered in your narrative. Now, I would like for you to keep in mind that the preparation of incident reports really reflects on you as a police officer and your level of experience, training, and professionalism. So it's very, very important that when you prepare your report and you prepare your narrative, that you utilize proper spelling, punctuation, and grammar when you're completing this document. Failure to do so could really make you look bad. You want to make sure that you're not writing your report like you're doing informal communication or texting. This is a formal document and a formal record of the police department and the activities of the police department. So let it reflect the professional that you are, and it also let it reflect the professionalism of the Notre Dame College Police Department. Now, when we do our reports, we will always do them in the Ohio Law Enforcement Gateway records management system that we access through the OLEG portal online. On a procedural note, I want to talk briefly about how we number our reports. There is a particular format which we use, and it's an AA-BBBB-CC format, where AA represents the last two digits of the current year. For example, 2015 would be 15. The BBBB is our sequential report number. It begins with 0001 on the first day at the beginning of the year, where the first call record or incident report is prepared. CC represents the two-digit month that the report was taken in. As you can see, 01 for January through 12 for December. Now, it's important to note that every incident report must be associated with a call record. However, not all call records are going to require an incident report. Again, think back to the beginning of this presentation when we defined an incident. As I said as an example, unlocking a door for someone or giving them a jump start isn't going to require an incident report, but it will require a call record. Activities that don't meet the definition of an incident may be recorded simply with a call record. However, in those cases, please make sure and use in the narrative of the call record some additional detail to describe what your activities were. Don't just be very minimalist in your information. Again, we complete our documentation not for our benefit, but the benefit of the person who's reading the document. So make sure that there's sufficient information in there that the reader of that call record knows what you were doing. The incident report is always going to be the same as the call record number. In fact, when preparing call records, there's a particular checkbox which specifically designates that the call record number will also be assigned as an incident number, and that the call record will create a shell incident report in the OLEG system. Again, we'll learn about that in a different presentation. Now, you will have a case folder that's going to bear the report number, the type of incident, and the date of the incident, and there'll be a number of different items that will be placed in that particular case folder. It's important that you make sure that a hard copy of your report, all investigative documents, witness, victim, and suspect statements, copies of Miranda warnings, copies of any evidence or property receipts or sheets, supplemental reports, pictures, and any other type of documentation associated with your investigation needs to be placed in the case file folder. And it also needs to be uploaded into the attachments section of the OLEG RMS system. And this also would include video that we obtain out of our surveillance camera system. Now, this is policy. A basic police report must be completed by the patrol officer prior to the end of the officer's shift. If they have to stay over to get the report done, then they have to stay over to get it done, unless otherwise directed by a supervisor. This is very important because the chief of police needs these items on the next business day, or if there's some type of an emergency situation where we need to have to deal with a student or a student affairs type issue. It's very important that that basic police report is completed in a timely manner by the end of your shift. Now, not all police reports and investigations are going to be done as by the time you do the basic report. Oftentimes there's follow-up investigation that needs to be conducted for that investigation, and that's fine. because we just have to make sure that any officer who does any type of activity on a particular case, whether it's your case or not, needs to record that activity in an investigator's note, and that investigator's note needs to be added in the narrative section of the police report. And as we then get new attachments, new statements, all other type of additional documentation or pictures, anything that new that comes along, we'll include that as attachments in the case folder and in the RMS system as well. But we must make sure that we document all of our activity associated with the case. There's two exceptions to where we will not maintain records within the case file or within the OLEG RMS system. The first is student schedule printouts from cars. These are FERPA protected records, and we do not want to maintain them in the case file or in the RMS system, and basically they'll be shredded when they're no longer needed by the officer. The second protected record is records from OLEG or LEADS or NCIC. These are not loaded into RMS either, nor will they be maintained in the case file folder unless criminal charges have been issued. The officer can leave the printouts in the folder then when the officer turns in the case for review, because in this case we will take those printouts and we will forward them to the court and to the prosecutor's office when we submit the charges and submit the reports to those entities, and they will be disposed of at that time. But we'll still not maintain those records in the RMS system or in the case folder. We can always go back in and reprint them off and get new stuff should we need to be able to do so. Thank you for taking the time to take this course. The part 2 of this course will involve the preparation of call records within the OLEG RMS call record software. The third part of this presentation will be the actual preparation of incident reports within the OLEG RMS system. If you have any questions about any of the content of this course, please feel free to contact me, call me, email me, see me. You can also contact our training officer, and you can also contact one of our FTO staff, and they will be able to assist you and answer any type of questions pertaining to the information in this course. You'll be able to now go online to the appropriate address and be able to complete the test associated with this course, and I'm sure you'll do well. I wish you luck, and we look forward to providing future training for you, making it available.